Good morning, Malta and Gozo, and welcome to another episode of Lovin Daily. Today's a really special episode. It's our 1-year anniversary of doing this show, full of really great interviews. It's been such an exciting time. Please stay tuned for more. I'm Julian Bonici. This is Sam Vassallo. Our headlines are as follows. Our first story is obviously about the bombshell revelations concerning Vince Muscat being sentenced after pleading guilty for his role in the Daphne Caruana Galizia assassination. We're going to be talking about the case itself along with all the arrests and all the other details that came with it. The next story is Maltese Teaching Union doesn't want educators to receive the AstraZeneca vaccine. And our last story will be about the Animal Welfare Commissioner wanting Maltese courts to ban abusers from owning pets. At the end of it all, we've got a really good interview today with Eve Borges Bonello. She's the president of Team Star. She's a really vocal political figure at the moment. It's going to be a really interesting interview, so please stay tuned right from the end. But where else to start but from the bombshell sitting yesterday, which saw Vince Muscat, one of the men charged with carrying out the assassination of Daphne Caruana Galizia, pleading guilty to all charges, and that includes homicide along with a host of other related crimes. After pleading guilty, Vince Muscat was sentenced to 15 years in prison and given a €40,000 administrative court fine. However, Vince Muscat could be out by December 2027, given time already served and depending on good behaviors. So all in all, a pretty good deal all around for one of the men who, at the end of the day, killed a journalist in the country. In return, Muscat is going to testify against Alfred De Giorgio and George De Giorgio, the two other brothers who are also charged with carrying out the murder of Caruana Galizia. Lovin Malta is reliably informed that Muscat is heavily cooperating with the police on other major crimes, including heists and several other murders. However, what we know definitely so far is that Vince Muscat has been granted a presidential pardon to reveal what he knows for the murder of Carmel Kirkhope. Carmel Kirkhope was shot dead in October 2015. Nobody was ever caught. All there was CCTV footage of the incident itself. Prime Minister Robert Abela yesterday during his speech sort of hinted that Vincent Muscat was the shooter in that event and would need to return the fee that he was paid for the murder. In return, he's also going to reveal the masterminds and who ordered him to do it. Very interesting stuff. But it wasn't all that there was today. After Vince Muscat's plea, there was an arrest, right? There were a few arrests, right?
Indeed. So 3 men have been arrested after Vincent Muscat's plea. That's Robert Ajus and Adrian Ajus, who are known as Tal Maskar, and also a man called Jamie Vella. Now, these 3 men were arrested, of course, in connection to the assassination of journalist Daphne Caruana Galizia. They are believed to be the men who supplied the bomb in connection with this murder, and also in connection with murder of Carmel Kirkhope. It appears that the Ajus brothers are cooperating right now with police on the murders. Just a little bit about the Tal Maskars. They're well known in the criminal underground, and they're linked to smuggling, other murders. They're also linked to Romanian, Italian and Libyan gangs. I mean, this is a really important step in justice for Daphne Caruana Galizia, but we have a long way to go until full justice is achieved.
Yes, obviously the arrests of Tal Maskar, given their criminal links, does raise the questions how these men were allowed to operate, right? For so long without any arrests ever happening. In fact, Daphne Caruana Galizia had actually written about Adrian Ajus himself, particularly his relationship with more supermarkets. Ryan Schembri. Ryan Schembri is actually the cousin of Keith Schembri. Had to flee the country after more supermarkets sort of ran into €1 million debt, and he still remains at large. Carmel Kirkhope, the man who's part of the presidential party, is actually linked to this entire affair. So Carmel Kirkhope had actually loaned Schembri and Ajus €750,000 for more supermarkets. Unfortunately, that loan seemingly was never paid back. Ajus was actually the guarantor of the loan, putting his villa up as a thing. So this issue was only settled once Carmel Kirkhope was murdered. So make of that what you will. We'll obviously see what's going to happen in the coming days in court. Prime Minister Robert Abela actually gave a statement last night, following obviously all the events that happened. Abela made it clear that Muscat, for now, has not implicated any politicians or sitting ministers or former ministers, so it remains to be seen how that will develop. He also revealed that, Muscat was granted a presidential pardon on the approval of entire cabinet on the advice of the Attorney General and Police Commissioner. However, what Abela made clear, that this showed that the institutions were working. Obviously, there's a lot of debate around that, given the amount of time it actually took to arrest these people, but obviously it's a step in the right direction. Abela also made it clear that all the other claims Muscat has told police officers are still under investigation. Lovin Malta is informed that there could be more arrests in the coming days and weeks, so stay tuned for the story. We're expected to see quite a lot of developments. Let us know what you think about this entire case in the comments below. Was Vince Muscat's sentence too lenient? Was it too harsh? What do you think about it? Do you think we could actually maybe find the end to actually closing a chapter on this really, really horrific part of Maltese history?
Indeed, couldn't have said it better myself. On to our next story. So, Maltese Teaching Union doesn't want educators to receive the AstraZeneca vaccine. So, the minority union, which is, UPE, Union of Professional Educators, they came out with a statement saying that they don't want their members to receive the AstraZeneca vaccine. Now, this all boils down to one famous study now, I suppose, based on 2,000 participants. It's not peer-reviewed, and it claims that the AstraZeneca vaccine does not work against the South African variant of COVID-19, and it doesn't work on mild cases, but is very efficient on severe cases and death. So, may I remind you, we are taking the vaccine not to completely eradicate COVID-19, that is probably never going to happen, but to ensure that hospitalizations severely drop and you have less chance of dying from COVID-19. That's the whole point of taking this vaccine. Now, this is really sparking, a serious situation with vaccine skepticism. It's already an issue worldwide. Thankfully, not that much in Malta, but, we can't be, picky with these vaccines. We're even lucky that we've got them in this record time. I don't know what you thought about this.
Yes, no, I do get concerned, so I agree with you, right? So people have to remember, vaccine does not mean cure, right? It's meant to, actually a vaccine is meant to, build up your immunity to a virus, so should you get it, your symptoms are a lot less. This kind of talk obviously makes me concerned, because I'm not really a fan of vaccine skepticism, I think it's a really crucial part into us returning to the normality we sort of are all missing. Continue vaccinating, right? So just a small update on Malta's COVID-19 situation. Yesterday there were 221 new cases, 191 recoveries and 1 dead. That's put Malta's active cases at around the 2,500 mark. Till now, over 21,100 people have gotten the second dose of the vaccine. Quite a good chunk till now. I think it's over 50,000 who have received a single dose. So yeah, let's see what's going to happen. I'm really positive for the future. On to our last story. Malta's Animal Welfare Commissioner Alison Berzina has issued a formal recommendation to amend the law that will ban anyone from owning animals after they've been found guilty of animal abuse and neglect. At the moment, we've got this really funny loophole where only if people are charged under the electronic identification of dogs regulation will they be banned from owning animals. So you could end up in a situation where you get an animal abuser, quite a horrific animal abuser, gets charged in court, gets found guilty, but because he's not charged under this regulation, he's free to own a pet the very, very next day. And we've seen it happen in a couple of recent cases. So it's really important that sort of this recommendation actually becomes a reality. Let's hope that the minister is listening. We're really hoping for some changes. At the end of the day, animal abuse and animal neglect is such a big issue in Malta, and unfortunately, it's not tackled correctly. I don't know what you think about it.
Indeed. Speaking about reforms to legislation, bestiality is not illegal. That is super serious, and this comes 2 months after we had this horrific story of a 90-year-old woman who was mauled to death by abused dogs, and the dog owner was allowed to adopt another one even though he was found guilty of this. So let's hope we get some reforms sooner than later.
Yes, that's it from us from now. We've got just a short video to play. Coming up next is an interview with Eve Borges Bonello, that's the PN's Team Start president. Stay tuned. Remember, today is Lovin Malta's 1-year anniversary, so stay tuned for more exciting interviews like this in the future.
And we're back. May I remind you, it's Lovin Daily's 1-year anniversary. We've been through it all, super exciting interviews, and we have a very exciting one today. We have Eve Borges Bonello joining us, PN activist and also president of Team Start. How are you, Eve?
Oh, okay. Thank you very much for the invite. I really appreciate being given a platform for these ideas.
Our pleasure. So let's begin. Let's start at your roots. You first rose to prominence, public prominence, giving that impassioned speech at a protest for Daphne Caruana Galizia. How did you go from that to becoming Eve Borges Bonello, PN activist, president of Team Start?
I've always been super vocal about what I thought, whether it was in the classroom or some lengthy rant on Facebook. My preteen Facebook was just a bunch of lengthy rants at that point. So yes, I was always very interested in current affairs and interested in what's going on around me, and I always wanted to be part of it. I wanted to be part of the change I wanted to see, not to sound too cliche. And I feel that Daphne's brutal assassination was a wake-up call. I remember during the 2017 elections, so many people saying someone's going to kill her. And I remember shrugging it off, being as if that could happen in a normal democratic country. So when it did happen, it was a wake-up call. It was a wake-up call as to say it isn't a normal democratic country. And there are so many different sides to this murder. And personally, I got started in this activism when I had written an article for Lovin Malta. Vote 16 had just passed of the law allowing 16-years to vote. And I had written an article when I was 14 entitled, "Thanks for the vote, now give me someone to vote for," because I was just very disillusioned, disenfranchised, and frustrated at what was going on around me. So from there, I kept on being active. I kept participating in vigils and protests. I kept writing. I had written a poem dedicated to Daphne Caruana Galizia, which was satirical, as to say, od kwita tajċ kelma, showing how we have this culture of, instead of seeing a murder like this, seeing a situation like this, and saying, we need to stand up and do something. It's just terrified us even more into submission, even more into being quiet. And I always thought that. I felt that I always wanted to be a part of the group of people that stand up for what's right. Daphne Caruana Galizia, in short, I admired her always, even before her assassination, obviously. But she was a woman who wasn't scared to stand up to a bunch of corrupt men. She wasn't afraid of standing up for what's right. She faced these battles every day. She was threatened so many times, but she kept doing what was right. She kept fighting for the truth. And I mentioned that she's a woman, not to spin this into some feminist headline, but it is very, very relevant. She was called Is-Sahara tal-Bidnija for a reason. In our history, witches were women who were intelligent and asked questions. So it's no coincidence that she was called a witch. She was dehumanized, and I am sure that a lot of the dehumanization stemmed from her being a woman. And even through these new revelations, Vince Muscat's pleading guilty yesterday, we cannot take the government's cop-out to say this is the institutions working. They don't.
So you think we're a long way from justice for the Daphne Caruana Galizia?
Definitely. If the institutions truly worked, Daphne Caruana Galizia would be alive. If the institutions truly worked, Jürgen Finnick would be in prison for electrogas. If the institutions truly worked, Keith Kembry and Konrad Mitzi wouldn't be in government after the Panama Papers scandal. The institutions are failing. If they worked, she would be alive. And it's up to us as a generation to stand up and fight for this. And linking to what I had said before, that's why I got involved. And because I realized that just speaking about these things isn't enough. We have to roll up our sleeves and do something. I feel like besides the speech in December 2019, what really, really showed me the capability of young people and the importance of standing up was that we were trying to find a way to get students to the protest. So I was in a student council of a sixth form at the time, and I begged and convinced the student council and by extension the college to take a stance. And from that day we brought all our students out to the protests, and all other institutions and youths followed. We were the first.
Speaking of protests and activism, you are widely considered by the public to be progressive, but your party that you associate with leans towards conservatism. So who is giving in to who? You know, where do you feel like you have to adjust, or is the party kind of conforming to this new generation of activists?
What is a party? Well, no one's giving in to anyone. There's no equivalence between a person, a single activist, and a party. I am one activist within a party that's an umbrella that represents half the Maltese population. We live in a two-party system, and the thing is, it's not a system where half the country is progressive, half the country is conservative. I'm sure you'd agree that that's not the case. So parties are umbrellas for different ideas. It's cultural and historical. It's the Westminster model. It's Anglo-American. But what I find extremely interesting is that it's not only the fact that we have a two-party system. It's not enforced. We have STV voting, single transferable vote. This is proportional voting. Other countries which do have proportional voting have 1,000,000,001 parties. We don't. Why? Because historically and culturally, Maltese fall under these two umbrellas, through history and culture, not through ideology. The PN is a mosaic of different ideas. It's a mosaic of different ideas, different beliefs, and different backgrounds, incomes, whatever. I am part of that mosaic. I'm a small piece in it, in a larger mosaic, fighting for a better Malta, or fighting for justice, because a true patriot, and I'd like to mention this because Roberta Bella told me to join Team Malta. I'm already in Team Malta. Anyone who stands up to be counted and loves their country is in Team Malta. You don't have to be Team Labour to be Team Malta. A true patriot criticizes their country because they want to see an improvement.
Now let's talk about policies. If I can just shoot some brief opinions at you. Recreational weed, what's your opinion?
Briefly, I really agree with the party stance to decriminalize marijuana. It's a natural step. After 2015, the party had voted for amendment in the criminal code. But what I really look forward to is seeing the draft legislation and seeing that it's not just one flashy headline about legalization, but we're truly holistically taking on this issue, providing care and support for people who struggle with addiction, but not sending teenagers to prison for smoking a plant.
Assisted dying.
When it comes to assisted dying and euthanasia, it's one of those very controversial subjects for a reason. It's very emotional because people on both sides have very emotional arguments and experiences, and they're valid. And that's the exact reason why I don't think politicians should be discussing this, in the sense that politicians aren't the ones to lead this debate. Politicians have no right, when it comes to life and death, to manipulate people's emotions and votes. We need proper discussions, and these discussions to be led by academics and professionals regarding ethics and the medical sphere. I do not accept politicians dictating such an important, sensitive and emotional agenda. Everyone has an experience with this, more or less.
And what about the state of sexual health in Malta?
I believe before we debate or even think of discussing anything, we need proper sex education. We need a proper sex education curriculum. We have to equip Maltese youth and Maltese students with the knowledge and tools to figure out real world problems. Why? Because only when we have sexual education, a good sexual education that doesn't just teach abstinence, can we start talking about issues like contraception, over-the-counter birth control pills, why they're so limited and why they're not available over-the-counter based on antiquated studies and non-peer-reviewed claims. Then we could start talking about consent. I'm sick of seeing the news cycle always publishing stories about women getting taken advantage of and men walking scot-free. And to be fair, the other way around too. We need to teach consent. And only after we have sexual education can we start discussing the state of affairs like LGBT health. Only then. And I believe we need to be really educated by academics and people who are experts in the field, because that's the only way to move forward. And as Team Start, we're launching the Equality Initiative, where we hope to invite these discussions and these debates and lectures with professionals to not only raise awareness, but as a generation learn more.
So if you run for this next general election, which everyone is rumored to happen in a year's time, you'd be the youngest MP in Malta. What's the first thing you do in Parliament? And on this subject of Parliament, you would likely benefit from the gender quota bill. What's your opinion on it?
I do not think it's a good idea for 17-year-olds to run for Parliament because it's illegal. So regarding that, we'll speak when I'm 18. But regarding the gender mechanism, I've always had a very strong opinion on it. I do believe we live in a very sexist, misogynist Mediterranean culture. It's a matter of fact. So in this situation, yes, you do need something radical to propel women forward and to give them the support to actually get elected and make the change and represent half the country. We need to do this. But my only issue is that, yes, it's important and it's a positive measure that we need in Parliament to increase representation of women, because it's simply not going to happen alone. If we just wait for it to happen, it would take another 100 years. But my only issue is if this is dragged on to the long term. If an issue like this is dragged into the long term, that's when we mess up. That's when we say women are incompetent, they cannot do it alone, so we have to help them. That's when we're demeaning to women. Right now, we need a radical change. Later, let's provide other measures. And it's not just about getting women in Parliament. There's a reason a lot of women don't run for Parliament. And it's not only sexism. It's the sexist structure of Parliament. We need better hours, we need family-friendly measures, and we need better working conditions.
Okay, my last question for young people, like you and I. We're often shrugged off as being either uninterested in politics, or if we are interested in politics, dismissed because we're young. It's kind of a double-edged sword. What do you say to young people, looking to get engaged in Malta? And what do you say to older people who look down on activists our age?
I feel the problem here is the way we look at politics. We see politics as this disgusting, difficult, boring, tedious vehicle that is self-serving and doesn't propel change. It's not true. Politics is fun. Politics is what changes the world. Politics is what drives change. It's fun, and you have to enjoy being in it. And that's why us youths, like us at Team Start, enjoy it, because we make politics fun and we stick up for what we believe in. The issue here is these people that don't see it as fun and don't enjoy doing their job. Once you don't enjoy what you're doing it for your pockets, you're doing it for money, you're doing it to stroke your own ego, and you're doing it for power. Us youths, we don't care about that stuff. We want actual change. And that's the way we get youths into politics, by showing it as fun, by showing it as a vehicle for change, and by committing to creating that change like we're trying our best to do at Team Start.
Beautiful. So that was all from us here on Lovin Daily, a special episode, our 1-year anniversary. I was joined by Miss Eve Borges Bonello.
I'm honored, thank you.
President of Team Start, and have a day full of lovin'.